Hi, and welcome to this second webinar in the Alumni Career Development series. And today we're going to be talking about storytelling in job interviews or presentations. And with me, I have my colleague, Pernilla Thellmark, career coach at LUSEM, and also Tim Danielsson, management consultant at PwC and LUSEM Alumnus. And together we will discuss the different techniques and strategies for how we can present and communicate what we want in a concise way. And if you could all just mute yourselves, that would be great. And then we will do some Q&A in the end, so you can write your questions in the chat. And without further ado, I give the word over to Pernilla and Tim.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Well, as Sarah said, I work at Career Services here at the School of Economics and Management. And at Career Services, we support all students, but also alumni from the school with anything you may need when it comes to taking your next step, finding out what you want to do with your career, whether it's your first step or your next step. We do that through individual career coaching, but also offering webinars and workshops, and also being inspired by others, I think, is a great thing. So today, I'm really looking forward to listening to you, Tim. So very welcome, Tim. And why don't you start by introducing yourself and also telling us about your career story so far?
Thanks for having me. Thanks for the invitation. And where do I start? I guess I start with I'm from Germany. My wife is Swedish. That explains everything. That explains my family name, and that explains why I do live in Gothenburg. My career story so far, you could say, currently I'm working at PwC in Sweden. I have two focus areas. One of them is HR related to transactions. So it's buy-side due diligence, sell-side due diligence, what happens to the people when there is a merger. And then it's everything related to talent management. Because before joining PwC, I worked at a global recruitment firm focusing on sales. And you could say the product I sold was a candidate. So you could really say it was sales towards customers and then sales toward the candidate, bringing the two parties together. Let me go back to when I finished high school. I decided to do a very typical German model. It's an apprenticeship. It's somehow known over the world, but you don't go to university, you choose a profession. And I wanted to work within hotel management. Why is that? Well, I watched some documentaries about 5-star hotels all over the world, and I thought, well, this looks interesting. I want to do that. So, and I also was kind of like tired of learning, or not really learning of school. That was the reason why I moved to Frankfurt, did this apprenticeship, and you can really say, like, you go through every department in a hotel. So from restaurant, banquet, but also housekeeping. After completing this apprenticeship, my appetite for more was there again, like really learning. And then I decided to study. I had a gap to fill of 6 months. And then I got the opportunity to move to Paris to do an international management training, working with international sales, but also learning French. So now, as you know, sales is always to do with the customer. So I had to do phone calls, a lot of phone calls to French people. And I tried as good as I could with my French, explaining that at some point I might switch to English. And there were a few, or actually a lot, that just hang up on me because I switched to English. And this is also kind of like when it comes to my career story so far, there happened, of course, something with me. It's like, what am I doing here? I'm just trying to do a job. But then I told myself, don't take it personal. It's just that they are not comfortable with that. Just continue, stay on your path. So then after the 6 months, I went to Hamburg to study business administration. Had a major in auditing and tax law, where I also got granted with a scholarship. And this also included internships, but also like my first job after the bachelor. And I started within corporate finance as an associate. You know, I had this picture in my head. It's a nice office in the city center of Hamburg. It's like always suit and tie. Nice. It's also when kind of like suits was very, very popular. Kind of like this long office hours, all-nighters. And being like fresh from university, I guess it's kind of like a really nice picture. But then being there, it wasn't that nice as I pictured it. So I really threw all my plans overboard because I wanted to do a master in finance in Lund. But then I said, no, that's not it. Let me do something else. I still wanted to go to Lund, and I did that. But then I just changed the master's program. And then after moving around for, I guess, about 8 years, I decided I want to go back to Munich. I want to go home, and there should be something not related to corporate finance, but also not related to management consulting. So, and then I started working at the recruitment firm I just guided you through before. And never say never, here I am working as a management consultant. So as you can see, my career story or my career was everything else than straightforward. I tried different things, by that I learned what I want, I learned what I can do, and I learned whom I want to work with. And I guess that's a very important part also to dare to try different things and not be afraid of failure.
Thank you. I think that's really interesting to listen to. And as you say, not being afraid of failures and really trying to follow yourself, what you want to do, finding out who you are and who you want to be professionally. So I think it's really an interesting story to listen to, and great advice also to everyone listening, that we have a long career ahead of us and there are so many different things we may do. So, Tim, what has been your key to success, do you think?
Well, first, I guess accepting that the beginning is always tough helped me a lot. Of course, there were, I don't know how many moments I just wanted to leave the office or the hotel, just walk through the door and say, okay, goodbye, I'll find something else. But due to the fact that I saw different or multiple employers, also being like when I still went to school, I like learned during the years, it's everywhere the same. I mean, you have to start somewhere. You have to really get to know each other. You have to learn how it is to behave there. You have to find your place. And that's everywhere the same. So accepting that helped me a lot. But then also, of course, being myself. I mean, I'm Tim, and I will remain, or I want to be Tim also in the future, and no one else. Asking the right questions, I guess that's also a very important part, or was like part of my success. And then also, I try always to choose people I want to work with over tasks. Because for me, it's always easier to do boring stuff with good people around you than the other way around. Yeah, and again, like dare to say no. And that might be to working tasks. It might also be I don't drive, like it's not good here. I don't feel comfortable. It's a toxic environment. I have to say no. I have to leave it, or I throw my plans overboard. Be honest with yourself. That helped me a lot. Yeah.
So be yourself, and as you said, be honest to yourself.
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
Because sometimes when we look for a job, we are so conscious about everyone else and we compare ourselves to others. So I think it's really important what you say, to find out who you are and then keep being who you are.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Since I know that you have been working with recruitment, could you just tell us what kind of steps there could be in a recruitment process?
Yeah, of course. I mean, once you handed in your application and hopefully get the yes or the invitation to an interview, it probably will start with the phone interview. In 9 out of 10 cases with the recruiter. 30 minutes talking through your CV, your application. You could also see it as a preparation for the personal interview. Nowadays, of course, there are video interviews as well. First round, second round might also follow like an in-person interview, depending on where you are, where your future employer is. That really depends also on the hiring manager. Then there might also be in Sweden like a fika, or somewhere else like getting to know the team lunch, or you might also get invited to assessment days where you have to like solve case studies. That also depends on the profession. But overall, you can really say like there is a phone interview, then there's a video interview, and probably an in-person interview. And not really steps, but what you can expect throughout the whole recruitment process are competency-based interview questions. And this is something you can learn actually, how to answer these questions and what are these questions actually. And they target your competencies.
And I think that's really interesting what you say. And I think that many of the alumni listening will think about, oh, okay, so I can learn those questions. I can think about how I can answer these questions, even though, of course, every answer should be your own. But let's move on to the job interview and talk a bit about that. What do you think that you should do in order to succeed in a job interview? What are your best advice?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I guess it's you should do your homework, prepare yourself for the upcoming interview. That's one could be like really anticipate possible questions, but then it's also really like practical stuff. Use LinkedIn to get a first impression of your counterpart, and you have already seen like a picture. You know what the person does, and you also have a look at the curriculum of the person. Then it's kind of like always easier to get in touch with the other. You may have connections together, or you share connections. But then also, in case of a video interview, like test the technical equipment in advance. Yes, we did that, even though it did not work when I started to speak right here. Open the link, check your headphones. When it is an in-person interview, know where to go, calculate with traffic jams, delays of public transportation, things like that. Then, of course, like have your story ready. When walking the interview through your CV, do not only focus on your different stations, highlight why you did what you did, motivate your decisions, to really give the interviewer an understanding who you are and why you did what you did. Then coming to the competency-based questions. I mean, for me, it's all about the what and the how. And there is a technique you could use to answer these questions, which is called STAR. You might have heard of it. It's situation, target, action, result. And by that, you can really structure your answer, and also helping the interviewer understand what was the situation actually, and what did you do what was the target, what did you do to reach the target, and then in the end, did you reach it or not? So, and by that, you could, I wouldn't say you can answer every question, but it helps you to answer a lot of questions. And the STAR technique can also help you to formulate your letter of motivation, if there is one requested. A little bit shorter, of course, but having that in mind helps a lot. Then, of course, like, what is it you can bring to the table? Why should the hiring manager choose you and not person B, for example?
So I think that what you say, thank you so much for that STAR model. It's a great way to tell a story. As we're talking about today, storytelling. This is a great way to think, to actually structure storytelling in a way. And also, I always think that there is, I mean, you should be well prepared for an interview, but at the same time, you cannot have canned answers to anything, to everything. I mean, so there's also a balance between, I mean, you should be well prepared, but at the same time, you may have a question where you don't really have a good example.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are so many weird questions out there. I was once asked, okay, if we would give you 10,000 euros, what would you do with that?
And what did you
And I was like, yeah, why would you do that? And then, of course, it seems, or what they wanted to hear is, how do I think as a person or as an individual? What do I do with the money? Do I go out and kind of like, okay, I want to go on a like wellness trip just for me? Or do I go out and buy champagne and some snacks for my teammates as well? So that kind of like was the logic behind it.
Yeah, okay.
There are so many questions. You can't be prepared for everything. That's true. But what you can be prepared for is also, or what you also can do is providing the interview with food for questions. For instance, do not only write in your CV that you do sports. I mean, share your biggest achievements, what you're training for, because I guess almost every candidate does sports, loves to cook, enjoys reading books. So here again, tell your story, find a way to stand out, but then also to really make it easier for you to tell a story. Why are you training for to run a 10K under 40 minutes, for example? Or where do you want to travel? Things like that.
So thinking about the why and how, as you say, is a great comparison.
Yeah. And then when it comes to the why, it's also like, if you do not understand a question, ask what the interviewer means. Try not to sit there and really anticipate what is meant, because then you won't come up with a structured answer. Asking questions is good. It also demonstrates that you're interested and that you have the capability of asking questions.
Great. And I definitely agree with being well prepared by thinking through, but also saying out loud the answer to certain questions that you think might come or probably will come.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, bring your questions to the interview, both personal and professional. And you could really say like 10 or 15 minutes of each interview are there that you can ask your questions. That's your time. So it's a very important part of the interview. And when I'm acting as a hiring manager, and we get to the section and then we ask, okay, the candidate, please, what do you want to know? And the answer is, well, I don't have any questions. Then it's more like, okay, are you actually interested in the job? Or like, there has to be something.
So give any example of a question that you can prepare to ask in an interview?
Yeah, it's more like now when it comes to the hybrid way of working, how do we do team meetings? That will be something. Then when it is like role related, how do you work with that? How do you work with this? For example, how are you as a manager when there is an issue with a client? Do you have my back? Can I rely on you? There are so many questions you could really ask.
Those are really good questions.
Yeah.
And I think also try to think through what's important to you, so that you ask questions around those things that matters to you.
Yeah.
So you said leadership, or if there are other things that matters to you, then it's a good way to prepare questions around these topics.
Yeah, exactly. And well, last but not least, you should really avoid talking about previous employers in a bad way. I know sometimes it's really tricky when you get the answer, like, why are you applying here? Try to focus on you and your appetite for learning and your willingness to continue growing, stuff like that. And well, on a personal note, what I always do when having an interview, I'm either wearing one of my favorite shirts or like a suit. It depends on the occasion, but that makes me feel comfortable. And once you're comfortable, I still believe that you can perform in a better way. So that might also be something. Choose a blouse, a shirt you like.
Really good advice.
Be good. Yeah.
Thank you. And then there is this question that very often comes in the beginning of the interview that might be tricky, which is, tell me about yourself. Do you have any good advice how you should handle that question?
I mean, it is a very tricky question. Not only in job interviews, also when you go are at a networking event and you get the question, what do you do for a living? It's like, okay, where do I start? I don't want to sound boring, but well, first of all, for me, the answer should be work related. Hiring managers do not want to hear that you have a weakness for chocolate, for example. Try really to demonstrate transparency and use challenges you mastered to show who you are and what your values are, or use feedback you received from former colleagues, classmates, things like that. Do not be afraid to tell your future employer about your weaknesses when you ask, of course. Here, I'd say the important part is to highlight that you are aware of these characteristics and how you can turn them into good, or how your weaknesses helped you to achieve something good. That might also be something. Then we have the career philosophy. What I would say is like, what is your approach to what goals? How do you see yourself? Who are you? Why are you doing different steps? And you can also elaborate on that, Pernilla, on the career philosophy. But then overall, I would say it's really tell me about yourself. Try to show passion, because you know yourself and you can learn that either with your girlfriend, boyfriend, parents. I did that. I asked, okay, who am I? And then I did not only get weaknesses, I get also good things. So and it really helps you to structure that.
Yeah, I think what you say, to show passion and motivation, is so important. You want to hire someone you trust and believe in, but where you also share the same passion for this industry or for this company or what it's about. But you share something with the one you're talking to in the interview. Yeah. So I think sharing passion, as you say, or motivation is really, really good advice. And also about the career philosophy, when you're quite young, or if you want to take another step or into a new direction where you maybe you don't have that much experience in that specific field, then you still have a career vision, a philosophy about, this is how I would like to contribute. This is why I want to go into this industry, for example. So I think that's something not to be afraid of talking about your career philosophy or your career vision. So great advice. And also on that question, the weakness question, I think. Yeah. I know that many people struggle with that one. You know that it's going to come. So it's a good way to be well prepared, because they will ask that question.
yeah, probably they will, yeah.
I know that you, Tim, you have been working in different countries, specifically in Germany and in Sweden. Is there any difference when it comes to the job interview situation in Sweden and Germany?
Well, in general, I would say there isn't. The interviews are structured in the same way. I received similar questions, and then the expectations on the other side of the table are the same. On a personal level, the interviews I had with Swedish employers were more at the same eye level, and I recognized even higher focus on me as a person. And of course, like again, in Sweden, you always got invited for a fika, and you just like more in a casual way, come over, have a look at the office. So that's really what I experienced.
Great. So I have another question. If you have a couple of years of experience and you want to take your next step in your career, how should you highlight the experience you have in that job interview?
Well, you should point out what your daily tasks were or are and what you achieved during the past years. Again, use the STAR technique to easily structure your experience and hence give the interviewer clear insights into your career achievements. Again, be prepared, do your homework, try really to match your expertise with the job requirements. And ask the right questions to underline your expertise. For example, if you're applying for a project manager position, ask how projects are structured, which different phases they have, and what important project milestones are for them. And based on that, you can have really like a discussion and even discuss the different phases. Like, for example, discuss the kickoff, discuss project guidelines. How do you behave? And things like that. So, and that also like it underlines your expertise and your experience.
If you want to take your next step into a new direction where you don't have experience from that field, what could you highlight then during a job interview? What story can you tell then?
Well, the story you can tell is that you highlight your motivation and your transferable skills. You can highlight why you are the perfect fit, even though you don't have any experience. Demonstrate your willingness to invest, both like time and also when it comes to salary, for example. But what you can also use is a letter of motivation, even if it's not required, but it might be a good choice to demonstrate your reasons. Really like highlighting, why am I doing this? Why am I applying here? For example, when my wife and I decided to move to Sweden and I applied for jobs, I was very interested in a role within purchasing. So I didn't have, and I still don't have any experience within this field of work, but I worked within sales. So I had many negotiations, meetings, and discussions with buyers. And that was the story I told. I know how salespeople structure their meetings, which technique they apply, as to why I believe I'm a very good fit. To really read the salesman or the saleswoman who is coming, and then being able to adjust my negotiation strategy according to their different techniques. That's what I applied, and the story I told. Well, then COVID came, so everything was on hold. But it was the same with PwC. Even though I worked within corporate finance, I didn't have any experience within management consulting. So, but then I highlighted why I want to do it and that I'm willing to invest. And here I am. So I guess that's really the most important part, to know for yourself why you want to do it and what you are willing to give.
It's really to hear your examples. And I mean, it's been successful. So if I understand you right, it's about, if you want to go into a new direction, it's about finding out, trying to understand the new job you are applying for, even though you don't have experience in it, and trying to transfer the experience you have into that situation.
Exactly.
Great. I think that's a really good example that can help many of us. So great. So now I would also like to ask you, because you have given us so many good examples of, and shared so much from your career journey. So now if you should summarize and just give 1 or 2 tips to everyone's listening here today, what would that be when it comes to succeeding?
Yeah, of course. I have 4. I hope that's also okay. 4 recommendations. So I guess it's well, be prepared as good as you can. Again, You can't be prepared for everything, but do your homework. Be ready to tell your story, know who you are, know what you want. After an interview, I recommend to send a short email thanking the interviewer for its time. In case you are still interested, name that and offer that you would be available for any follow-up questions. And then always show respect, even if you had bad experiences throughout the recruitment process. You never know what is happening on the other side. The world is small. We always see each other a second time. And try to see recruitment processes as a chance to grow your network.
Thank you. That's great.
You're welcome.
So now let's see if we have any other questions from all those who are listening. So we welcome Sarah back.
Hello, everyone, and thank you both, Pernilla and Tim, for a really interesting session. But yeah, let's see. Do you guys have questions back home? Write them in the chat, and then we will ask either Tim or Pernilla, so that you can get some more tips and tricks.
I would want to highlight once again, since I think it was a great advice you gave us with the STAR technique, to actually think through those steps when it comes to storytelling, because I think that many people may think, what is storytelling? How am I going to use storytelling when it comes to a job interview? But it's actually about telling, as you said, also the how and why, thinking about, is there a backstory when you talk about what you do, what you want to do, or your skills? How do you use your skills? How come you're interested in this company? So always think, is there a backstory to start with? That is storytelling. And then it's easier for someone to follow and to get engaged and involved in your story. Any questions?
Yes, let's see. The first one is, what is your suggestion about home office? Is that a question you can ask, or is that a no-go during a first interview?
Tim?
Yeah, I would say you can ask it. I mean, if it's not clearly highlighted in the job description, you could also ask for like flexible working or remote work, if you do not want to use the word home office. But for me, it's not a no-go, because I mean, I guess it became very important for every one of us. And if you are in a current employment where you have the flexibility, then of course it's important, because you don't want to lose that, or at least I don't want to lose it. So yes, you could ask it, absolutely.
And it says here, you mentioned that it's important to ask questions at the end of interviews. What questions should you not ask? Are there any questions that recruiters or employers raise eyebrows at?
Well, I mean, it depends on where you are in the interview process. When it is the first interview, I always recommend not to ask about the salary, not to lift the money topic if your counterpart is not doing that. That's one question I would not ask during like a first round. Otherwise, for me, there are no other no-go questions or questions you shouldn't ask. Pernilla, what do you say?
I agree with you. And I mean, as long as it is a question that matters to you, something you are really curious about, or something that's important to you, I think it's a good question. It should, of course, be around the job situation and the work you are applying for. But no, I can't see any specific questions that you shouldn't ask, as long as it's related to the job.
And someone is wondering, Tim, what your answer would be to the question, what is your weakness? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, my weakness is being impatient. And when I go back to the discussions I had with my wife, it's also that I'm in some situations fearless, that I always want to do something, that I kind of like, I'm in tunnel mode and then I just do it, and I really drop the bright side, and I kind of like forget what's happening around me. Then also when it comes to being impatient, for example, I get sometimes irritated when colleagues or whoever like asking the same question for 3 or 4 times, and we just discussed it, because that's clearly a fact that someone is not listening. So that's kind of like my answer to that. Then if we go further with that, taking the tunnel mode and being fearless, trying to turn it around, saying, but this helped me many times actually to reach my sales target. It helped me many times to not, or to deliver within a certain deadline. So then there we are at this kind of like making a good thing out of it again.
What would you say, Pernilla, about that question?
About that question, me personally, I would say that I know that I have a hard time sometimes to be too much into boxes, because I like to think outside of the box. I'm a creative mind. So that's something I know about myself. And of course, I have been working with that through my career. So I know how to deal with it, but it's also something that I still struggle with.
Yeah, because in the end, what the recruiter wants to know is that you are aware of your weaknesses, right?
Yes. So think about something. I mean, just as Tim said as well, you should be true to yourself. So be honest with something and think about, is there something that I actually do struggle with? Or maybe I used to struggle with it, but I have become better I know how to deal with it. That's a good way to tell that story, I think.
How would you answer when you get the question, what is your expected salary?
Yeah, I mean, I also, of course, I'm prepared. I know what I earn today, and I know where I want to land. Of course, it also depends. Is it just changing, for example, PwC with EY in the same field of business, the same tasks? Then, of course, I bring expertise to the table. So then you can also aim for a little bit more. I would always try to give a certain range of the expected salary. Building up the compensation. Okay, at the moment I earn this and that and that, and my aim is to earn this and that and that. Like really like giving a range of like between 5 and 10K, I would say. So for example, 78 to 85. That's what I want to earn.
And since we have so many international students here at LUSEM, this question is, we get it quite often. So was it difficult for you, Tim, to secure a job in Sweden as an international? Did you encounter any struggles along the recruitment process?
No, not really during the recruitment process. It was when it comes to the signing, because Sweden is so digital, and I didn't have any bank ID at this time. So everyone were a bit confused on how I could sign the contract, because in good old Germany it's still done with paper and pen. But then here we found a way. Otherwise, that was fine, because I'm also like an EU citizen, so that there were no boundaries.
And let's see, how can you effectively convey your career journey when you choose to return to university to enhance your skill sets, having already accumulated valuable experience and expertise without entering an entry-level position?
So I guess by that you mean I've been working for a couple of years after a degree, and then I decided to go back to it. I mean, the point is, it's your motivation. I guess for me, of course, the question becomes, why did you do that? What was the reason to do so? But then again, we are at storytelling, and I bet that there is a motivation behind it. And if you know how to kind of like sell it, then I guess that's the best or the most important part.
And another question, how would you best structure the answer to tell me about yourself? Should you relate your hobbies in terms of skills to the role, or is it best to relate how you got interested in the role? Maybe you could give an example with a pitch.
Yeah, of course. So what I would do is, based on the feedback I received from colleagues, I would describe myself as an analytical, communicative, driven, very structured and team-oriented person. I see solutions where others might see problems. My career philosophy is that I always want to improve at my job. I enjoy learning new things, gaining new skills, and becoming proficient in tasks or studies that I already understand. I have realized that I work best in a group setting because I can learn tips from my coworkers and managers. Even when I make mistakes, I see them as learning opportunities to grow and improve my skills. So now, of course, I also was prepared. Here again, it should be like an answer with passion. It's about yourself. So really structure, who are you? Like, I mean, for example, at Lund University, there are so many group works and cases, and then I guess you also get feedback from that. When working, you get feedback at least once a year when there is a career roundtable. You can use that and really try to build your story around who are you actually, but then focusing on work-related things as well, and highlight your appetite for learning, that you are really eager to develop yourself.
I can just add, if you want a structure, you can talk about what you do currently, then what you did in the past, what's relevant from the past, and then future, why you're interested. That could be just to have in mind if you're at an interview and you think it's tricky.
And we have time for one more question, but I have taken a screenshot, so we will try to respond to some of the questions later on. Let's see here. How can I showcase transferable skills on my resume to secure an interview despite lacking prior industry knowledge? Or to put it differently, how can I apply storytelling in my resume or a really good cover letter?
Yeah, very good question. And I mean, we talked about what you could highlight when you get to an interview without any previous experience within a certain field of work or in an industry. I guess that's a really tricky part to get there. So that's a really good question. I mean, what you can do is you always have the job description, the requirements, and also you try to match it. If the company is looking for a communicative person, then you highlight that in your CV. When it comes to storytelling in your resume, you can also, now I don't know your layout, but what you can do that you give small examples also in the resume. Challenges you have achieved, hurdles you have managed, stuff like that. But then again, I mean, of course, like a resume should be on point, short, hopefully, and that's why I still believe like a cover letter is a very good tool to tell your story and to highlight video, because then you can elaborate the challenges you underwent and how you resolved them.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Do you have anything more to add, Pernilla?
No, I think that was on that question, you mean?
Or in general?
No, I think it's been so interesting to listen to you, Tim, and thank you for sharing so much of your career and what you have come the conclusions you've come to through your career. And to that last question, to highlight transferable skills, I definitely agree with you. Try storytelling in your cover letter, but also I would say, if you want to switch into a new career, it's definitely possible, but you need to network a lot and you need to tell your story even more.
Yeah, and again, it was great that you reached out. I always appreciate such forums as this one here. When I was a young, or I'm still a young professional, so it's really good, even if it sometimes really sounds like, okay, that's nothing new, but hearing it from another person helps me a lot.
And I would also say that for the last question, you're a good example. You have showed us a career where you switched, you did different things because you wanted to, and you succeeded to do so through telling your story and showing your motivation. So I think you're really a great example.
Thank you.
Definitely. And with that, thank you both to Tim and Pernilla for being a part of this alumni webinar. And this was the second one. The last one is going to be on 21st of November. And that's going to be focused on how to network successfully, which both Tim and Pernilla emphasized is very important during the recruitment process, applying for work or just developing your skills. So make sure to go on lusem.se and sign up so that you don't miss out. And we will put all of the recordings for all 3 webinars later on the website. You will get an email once they are up. And with that, thank you very much for listening and for participating.
Thank you. Best of luck.